few things that I want to say. I say yes, you say no way. Living most of disagreeable. You love me now, I love you now.
Welcome to Heal Israel. My name is Jacob Ben Israel, and I'm the elder priest of the Culture Center of NCCI. We're located at 3901A Covington Highway in Decatur, Georgia. This program, as all our programs, are designed to give you insight as to biblical and secular history as to the past, present, and future of this so-called renamed Negro. A lot of times we've talked about we're Africans, we're this, we're that, but we never take the time to go back into the Bible and find out who we are from the Bible. And when you do, you find out one thing. Our people wrote this Bible. We are the chosen people of the true and living God. And when you get into the scripture and see the things that Yahweh said was going to happen to his people for not keeping his law, then you can very well see, if you read the curses yourself, you can very well see that these things has only happened to this so-called renamed Negro here in America. The reason why that Yahweh brought us over here as slaves was simply because we did not do what he said do. And he pre-warned us in Deuteronomy 28 chapter of the things that would happen to us for not teaching the earth Yahweh's ways. See, teaching the ways of God to bring peace upon the earth. This is why there is no peace, because no one wants to keep the laws of God. The Christians say, well, we're not under the law, we're under grace, and the Muslims just do what they feel like doing. And the thing of it is this: there is a set way about the way that things are supposed to be done on earth. Yahweh is a God of order, and we got things out of order. And because we didn't get things in order and went and served the gods of the nation, then we can very well see that the results of this is us being kicked out of our land and another people replacing us as the Hebrew Israelites in Israel, and us being over here in a country that is not ours, and we have been in service to and have been afflicted for almost 400 years, just as Yahweh told our Abraham in Genesis chapter 15 and 13. But then, understanding this, we also understand that there was going to be a redemption of the children of Israel. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. We listen to a lot of people talk about the Messiah and talk about the New Testament, but what they don't do is actually read the story so that you can get a good foundation on the New Covenant. As a matter of fact, I noticed today that when you get, and everybody else has noticed this, when you get around and look at who's ruling the earth today, it's the Christians that are basically ruling the earth. And in the second chapter of Daniel, it was given the Euro-Gentiles was given 2,520 years to rule. But they knew that the best way to keep us domesticated was to teach us religion. And this is what happened. They taught us the religion, and now we practice the religions that were taught to us by the nations, and we were sent out to teach the nation. So everything is turned upside down. But people have seized, especially these Christians, they've seized in on the blessings that was given to our fathers of the children of Israel, and they always talk about this grace, love, and how much they love God and what God has done for them. But and they talk about being in covenant with God. But what I always ask them was this: well, show me the covenant that Yahweh made with anybody except people in the lineage of the house of Israel. The whole Bible is based upon 7 covenants. The covenant that was made with Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the covenant that was made at Mount Sinai and Mount Horeb with our people when we came out of Egypt, which they call the Old Covenant. Then you had the covenant with David, and you had the New Covenant that was made with our people. But what I'm going to do, I'd like to go in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, and I'm going to read something pertaining to the covenant and see if this thing pertain to the whole nations, or if it just pertain to one nation of people. I'm going in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 7, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 7. It says, If therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there that another priest should arise after the order of Melchizedek, and not be called after the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed, there's made of necessity a change also of the law. Not a putting aside of the law, but a changing of the law as pertaining to the priesthood, because we know that the Messiah became the high priest of the order of Melchizedek, so that set the Levitical priesthood aside until the Messiah could return, redeem his people, and set up a kingdom, a righteous governmental system, and reign on the throne of David here on this earth. Let me finish here. This is Hebrews 7 and verse 13. It says, I better pick this up at, let me go down a little further here. I'm going to pick this up at Hebrews 8, and I'm going to pick this up again at Hebrews 8 and verse 7. It says, for if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. Talking about what people call the new covenant today. For finding fault with them, not with the law, but with our fathers. He said, behold, the days come, saith the Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Adonai. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Adonai. I will put my laws in their mind, and write them in their hearts, and I will be unto them an Elohim, and they shall be unto me a people. Well, people tell us today that we're not under the law, we're under grace. Well, why would Yahweh take his time to write his law in your heart and in your mind if you're not under the law? And this covenant wasn't made with everybody. This covenant was made with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Now, let's go and verify that. I'm going in the book of Romans here and read some things that Paul had to say pertaining to this. Romans chapter 15. And I'm going to pick this up. I think I want to pick this up about middle ways, the chapter. Romans chapter 15 and verse 8. Paul says, now I say that Yeshua HaMashiach, whom you call Jesus Christ, was a minister of the circumcision, who are the Jews, for the truth of God, to confirm the promises made unto our fathers. See, this is why the Messiah said in St. Matthew 15 chapter that I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He had to come and seal the new covenant in his blood, and in the sealing of the covenant with the house of Israel, we can understand why he said in John 3:16 that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoso believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Not believe just to believe, but believe according to the doctrine. Now I'm going to pick this up at verse 8 again. This is Romans 15 and verse 8. Now I said that Yeshua HaMashiach was a minister to the Jews for the truth of God, to confirm the promises made to our fathers. He's referring to the covenants. And that the Gentiles may glorify God for his mercy, as it is written. For this cause I will confess you among the Gentiles, and sing unto your name. And again he said, rejoice you Gentiles with his people. And again, praise the Adonai, all you Gentiles, and laud him, all you people. And again, Isaiah said, there shall be a root of Jesse, and he that shall rise to reign over the you Gentiles, in him shall the Gentiles trust. Now, when we deal with the things that we deal with pertaining to Christianity, we got all of the doctrine that we got from the Euro-Gentiles. And this is what I can't understand, because Christ, the whole book was written by one nation of people, the Hebrew Israelites. Now, let me show you what else was given to them. Now, if you notice, all of the people that went out teaching the Word of God, once the Messiah came during the first 10 years, were Hebrew Israelites. Now, let me read something to you here out of the book of Romans, Romans chapter 9, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 1. It says, I say the truth in the anointed one, I lie not. My conscience also bearing me witness in the Holy Ghost, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart. For I could wish that myself were accursed from the anointed one, for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh. Now, they always show us Paul as a Gentile, but Paul was a black Hebrew Israelite. Verse 4, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption of God, and the glory of God, and the covenants of God, and the giving of the law of God, and the service of God, and the promises. All of the things that Yahweh had was given to the children of Israel to disperse among the nations. But what the nations did, the nations came in and invaded our captivity, and to carry out God's curse on us, he scattered us to the four corners of the earth, especially here in the Americas, as slaves. But let's go and see some other things that the Messiah had to say about his who he was and so forth and so on. I'm going into St. Luke chapter 4. And I'm going to pick this up, St. Luke chapter 4. And I want to pick this up at the time when the Messiah went and talked to, when he went and got his baptism from, immediately he was taken up into the wilderness by Satan. And let me read some things to you that happened once the Messiah was tempted for the 40 days and 40 nights by Satan, and then returned to his own land. This is in St. Luke 4, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 10. It's verse 16, rather. It says, and he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. Now the Messiah went to church on Saturday. Everybody say they're followers of the Messiah, but they go to church on Sunday. Now I find something wrong with that. Let me finish this up here. It says, verse 17, and there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah, and when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Adonai is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of the sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of Yahweh. And he closed the book, and he gave it again to his minister, and sat down, and all the eyes of them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began to say, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. Now, now Paul told you what he came for. He came to confirm the promises that was made with our fathers. This is why he came. He said himself in St. Matthew 15 and verse 18, I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, now, once the Messiah came and delivered this covenant, confirmed this covenant with our fathers, and then died and sealed that covenant in his blood, let's go and see what's going to happen at his return. Now, folks talking about, we going off to Never Land, we're going to be up in heaven walking around and throwing beer bottles everywhere, and when you get up in heaven, you're going to find out that everybody that lived on the earth that was a Christian that died went to heaven. And I don't understand that, because it said, if the righteous scarcely be saved, wherein shall the wicked be accounted of? And there's no place in the scripture to tell you what you're going to do in heaven. There's no place in the scripture to tell you that you are going to heaven. This is what the children of the adversary, the devil, them Christians, this is what they taught us. Now let me go and pick this up here, and I'm going to read some things that's going to happen once the Messiah returns to the earth. Now, keep in mind what we just read in St. Luke 4, and I'm going to read some of the same things in Isaiah chapter 61, but we're going to add the rest of the story to it. We're going to read what he did when he first came, and we're going to read what he did when he returns again. Isaiah chapter 61 and verse 1. The Spirit of the Adonai is upon me, because Yahweh has appointed me to preach good tidings to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Now remember in Luke, he closed up the book and gave the book back to the minister and said, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. Now let's finish up the rest of the story when he returns. This is Isaiah 61 and verse 2. To proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh, and the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Judah, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they may be called the trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that he might be glorified. Well, Judah is the house of the Jews. See, this explains why the Messiah said in St. John 4:22 that salvation is of the Jews. This explains why when the angel Gabriel went to Mary, she told him, say, you shall call his name Yeshua, because he shall save his people from their sins. We were the people that Yahweh had dealt with. We were the people that he had made covenants with, like Paul told the Gentiles that they were alienated from the commonwealth of Israel and without God in the world. And then he turned around and told them to say, the Gentiles sacrifice to devils and not to God. And truly today, all of the holy days that Christianity deal with, that they have set up as their holy days, these things, if you look at them, they're all tied up with pagan sun worship. All you got to do is read it. This is why they have sundials and so forth all on your churches and so forth, because they worship the angel, Satan, who is the angel of light. Isaiah chapter 61 and verse 4. And they shall build the old waste, and they shall raise up the former desolation, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolation of many generations. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the son of the aliens shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers. But you shall be named priest of Yahweh. Men shall call you the ministers of our God. You shall eat the riches of the Euro-Gentiles, and in their power, which is their glory, shall you boast yourself. For your shame you shall have double, and for confusion the Gentiles is going to rejoice in their portion. Therefore, in their land they shall possess the double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them. For I, Yahweh, love judgment. I hate robbery for burnt offering, and I will direct their work in truth, and I will make an everlasting covenant with them. And their seed shall be known among the Gentiles, and their offspring among the people. All that see them shall acknowledge them, that they are the seed which Yahweh has blessed. They who? The children of Israel. This is who that was talking about. Now, let me go and read some more things that is going to take place once the Master comes. I'm going to go into Isaiah chapter 24, and read some things he had to say out of 24. The reason why I read so much out of Isaiah is because Yahweh really loved Isaiah, and Isaiah has 75% of the new covenant, the details of the new covenant, the thing that Yahweh has covenanted with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah that was sealed in the Master's blood. Now I'm going to Isaiah chapter 24, and I'm going to pick this up at Isaiah chapter 24 and verse 17. He says, chapter 24 and verse 17, it says, Fear and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitants of the earth. And it shall come to pass that he that flee from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. And he that cometh up out of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be moved like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day, said Yahweh, that I will punish the host of the high ones that was on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners, are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. Then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when Yahweh of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion, that means Judah, and in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. And that's not what I get out of the things that I hear in the church. Now, I'm going to go to Isaiah chapter 44 and read some things out of Isaiah chapter 44 and see how this goes with the doctrine that they teaching in them whorehouses out there they call churches. Isaiah chapter 44, and I'm going to pick this up at Isaiah chapter 44 and verse 21. It says, "Remember these, O Jacob and Israel, for you are my servants. I have formed you. You are my servant, O Israel. You shall not be forgotten of me." Well, let's look at that. The Israelites wrote the whole Bible. The Israelites were the ones that went out and taught the world, and the world turned around and turned that back in Christianity. But you see, who were the servants? The servants that ministered the word of God to the people, all of them were Hebrew Israelites, and the Bible backs that up. I'm going to pick this up at verse 22. "I have blotted out as a thick cloud your transgression, and as a cloud your sin. Return unto me, for I have redeemed you." Understand this. Seeing that we were the only people that was in covenant with God, then we were the only ones that needed redeeming. Like Paul told the Gentiles, they were alienated from us and without God in the world. Even Peter said, for the first time, Yahweh went to the Gentiles to take out a people of his name. Well, that came after Christ came. After Christ came on the scene. But they didn't tell them to take over anything, because we read in the book of Romans that Israel was given all the authority of God upon the earth to minister to men. This is Isaiah chapter 44 and verse 23. It says, "Sing, O ye heavens, for Yahweh has done it. Shout, you lower part of the earth. Break forth into singing, you mountains, O forests, and every tree therein. For Yahweh has redeemed Jacob and glorified himself in Israel." See, it was Israel that received the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost. You go in the book of Acts, and if you're unlearned, you're going to see that it was many people in Jerusalem that had on the day of Pentecost. It was many people in Jerusalem, but these were the people that the brothers and sisters of Israel that had been colonized over Europe and Asia in 721 BC by Shalmaneser, and they were the ones that came back to keep the holy days. White folks wasn't keeping these holy days. If you think so, why then did Cornelius the first? That Italian was the first Euro-Gentile that heard the word of God, and that was 10 years after Christ was resurrected from the dead. So as we see, Isaiah said that Yahweh had glorified himself in Israel, and the way that he did that was by giving us of his spirit. Now, I'm going to go into the 66th chapter of Isaiah, and we're going to read some things out of Isaiah chapter 66. And don't tell me, well, that's the Old Testament. Ain't no such thing as the Old Testament. It might be the Old Testimony, but it's part of the Old Testimony. But you can't read the New Covenant no place in the New Testament. The New Covenant is written in the Old Testament, word for word, just like it's going to be set up, but man don't want to deal with these things. Let me go and pick this up at Isaiah chapter 66, and I'm going to pick this up at Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 9. It says, "Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth, saith Yahweh? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith your Elohim? Rejoice you with Jerusalem, and be glad with her, all you that love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all you that mourn for her." Now, why is he telling people to rejoice for Jerusalem unless there's going to be a kingdom set up in Jerusalem? You have to understand that the New Testament talks about the kingdom that heaven is going to set upon the earth. And when you go back and see the promise that was made to David, David was promised that he would never like a man to sit upon his throne and ruling anymore in Israel. And when the Messiah returns, he's going to be called the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, but yet and still, he still is the son of David. And this is the son that was promised that was going to sit on his throne forever. Now, Herbert Armstrong told y'all the Queen of England is sitting on the throne of David. Well, Yahweh said David would never lack a man to sit on his throne, and I'm quite sure the Queen of England is not a man. I don't think she is anyway. But Yahweh was talking about of David's seed that was going to sit upon his throne. So that those people would have to be black people, because the Hebrew Israelites were black. The Hebrew Israelites are the one that's in captivity and servants all over the earth today. We are on the bottom. All the nations are high above us, and we are the one that Yahweh is going to have to come and save unless unless we be totally annihilated as a people. Because when you look at the condition of the so-called Negro here, renamed Negro here in America, we are the only people that's not represented at the United Nations. See, we don't have anybody that speak for us collectively as a nation of people. We don't have any land that we govern. We don't have any currency on the market like all the other nations have. What we do, being captives in this country, is that we get the crumbs that fall from master's table, and then we fight among each other over those crumbs simply because we haven't realized who we are yet. We've allowed master to come in to tell us that salvation is of the Christians, but Christ himself said salvation is of the Jews. But that comes from not reading the Word of God. Isaiah 66, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 11. That you may suck and be satisfied with the breast of her consolation, that you may milk out and be delighted with the abundance of her glory. For thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will extend peace to Jerusalem like a river, and the wealth of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then shall you suck. You shall be borne upon her sides and dandle upon her knees. As one whom his mother comforted, so will I comfort you, and you shall be comforted in Jerusalem, not in heaven, in Jerusalem. And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of Yahweh shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. For behold, I, Yahweh, will come with fire, and with chariots, like a whirlwind, to render anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahweh shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one tree in the midst, eating that swine's flesh, and the abomination, all them crabs and lobsters and all that unclean junk y'all done learn to eat from these white folks. And the mouse shall be consumed together, saith Yahweh. Well, let's look at that mouse thing. Look at a squirrel, ain't nothing but a tree rat. He's unclean. People eat squirrels, coons, possum, all of those things is part of that rat family, and they are unclean, but yet and still, we still eat those things because these are the things we learn to eat here in this captivity. Verse 18, this is Isaiah 66 and verse 18. For I know their works and their thoughts. It shall come that I will gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and see my glory, and I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nation, to Spain, to Africa, that draw the bow, to Tubal, which is Greece, and Javan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard of my fame, neither have they seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. And they, meaning the Gentiles, shall bring your brethren, all your brethren, for an offering unto Yahweh out of all nations upon horses and on chariots and in leaders and upon mules and upon swift beasts to my holy mountain, Jerusalem, as Yahweh, saith Yahweh, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel unto the house of Yahweh. So he's talking about the nations bringing back the children of Israel, all of the children of Israel, to the holy land of Jerusalem. Well, look over there in Israel today and look around the world, you still see other so-called Jews in all other countries of the world. Well then, people talking about the Jews have returned to Zion. From what I read, he's going to gather all of the children of Israel back to Zion, not a part of them. This is Isaiah 66 and verse 21. And I will also take of them, talk about the Israelites, for priest and Levite, saith Yahweh. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I shall make, shall remain before me, saith Yahweh, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. Now, if all flesh is going to come, then all that flesh is going to have to be right here on the earth. And he said that for one new moon, which you Christians and Muslims don't know nothing about, and for one Sabbath, which all Christians change, he said that the people are going to come up on the new moon and on the Sabbath to keep Yahweh's holy days. Why? Because this is the time that the temple is going to be open. You see, it's not the nations that need saving. It's the children of Israel that's being saved. And when you check out the prophet Daniel, Daniel told us that this new world order that they're setting up today is going to destroy the mighty and the holy people who are the children of Israel. But let me give you a little bit more insight to show you who it is that's going to be fighting against the children of Israel with his children, which I say is the Christian church and all the nations who do not grab onto the coattail of the children of Israel. This is Revelation chapter 12, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 7 now. This actually takes place in the book of Revelation in the opening of the sixth seal. This is when Satan gets heaven thrown out of heaven, when heaven rolled back like a scroll and so forth and so on. This is Satan being thrown out. Because when you get further on in the book of Revelation, it tells you that heaven opened again, and that's when the Messiah came out of heaven. So let's pick this up at Revelation 12 and verse 7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought with his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast into the earth, and his angels was cast out with him. Well, how else can you what's the greatest way to deceive the world? To tell them that they don't have to keep God's law, because that's what you're going to be judged by. See, regardless of what has happened on the earth, at Judgment Day, you're going to be judged by the laws of God. Now, as far as who's going to run this kingdom is concerned, you check the book of Zechariah 8 chapter, and you'll find out that Judah is going to run this kingdom here. I think right now what we'd like to do is we'd like to go to a news report, and my brother Ariel is going to give us some of the current events that's taking place today, and then I'll come back and maybe we can deal with how these things concern us as people.
Shalom, good evening. This is Ariel Ben Yisrael with your current event news. Livestock, particularly cattle, is known as the oldest form of currency. About 2000 BCE, banking developed in Mesopotamia. Well known to the Africans, bartering was particularly famous from 100 to 1600 ACE. In 1792, the U.S. Coinage Act established the legal tender system, created the U.S. Mint, and regulated coinage. In 1995, more than 90% of all transactions in the U.S. were made electronically. According to the issue of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article entitled, "For Some, Cashless Society Right on the Money," technology companies are developing payment systems that will bypass cash, card, and checks. The goal is to store all financial information in a central data bank that will match consumers to accounts with fingerprints, irises, or DNA scanning. Convenience, conceit, or concubinage, the con. With metropolitan Atlanta being #1 in bankruptcies in the U.S., consumer debt experts anticipate people with a tendency to overspend or who can't manage their personal finances could fall into deeper trouble in a just plastic-only world. Yet the biggest risk is to your privacy and your security. According to Richard Hunter, Vice President of Security Research at Gartner Incorporated, a consulting firm, if you're living in a cashless mode, every commercial transaction becomes a part of your permanent record. It's a way of exposing oneself, and there's nothing wrong with that until one becomes a target or interesting to a criminal, a government, or other parties who would like to get some sort of advantage. In other news in CNN.com, FBI gets more domestic spy power, removing unnecessary bureaucratic obstacles. In Washington, CNN, in a move raising concern among some civil libertarians and lawmakers, the Justice Department said Thursday it is easing restrictions on domestic surveillance for FBI counterterrorism operations. The war against terrorism is the central mission and the highest priority of the FBI, said U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft. Because of that priority, he said the department is granting FBI field officers more authority to launch terrorism and undercover investigation, shifting such responsibility away from the agency's headquarters in Washington. Speaking at a news conference Thursday, FBI Director Robert Mueller said the changes remove unnecessary bureaucratic obstacles. The change follows widespread criticism that the nation's premier law enforcement agency failed to follow up on clues that could have collectively pointed to a pending terrorist attack before September 11th, and that the FBI headquarters had stymied the efforts of field officers to pursue such clues. The changes allow the FBI to gather information on individuals even if they are not under criminal investigation. The technique would include monitoring internet sites as well as libraries or religious institutions. People who go to places of worship, people who go to libraries, and people who are in chat rooms are going to have Big Brother listening in, even though there's no evidence that they are involved in anything illegal whatsoever, says Laura Murphy, a spokeswoman of the American Civil Liberties Union. But Justice Department officials said the changes only give FBI the same powers that private citizens have, so they say. Under the old rules, the FBI could not go into public places to seek information unless it was tied to a crime that have already been committed, said one official. We are turning the focus of the FBI 180 degrees from prosecution to prevention of future terrorist acts. All these guidelines is free those agencies to use every means possible under the Constitution and law to keep us safe, so they say. This has been Ariel Ben Yisrael with your news. Back to the Elder Yaakov.
Hi, welcome back to Hear, O Israel. I was reading some scripture before we went to the news. I was reading some scripture out of the book of Revelations 12th chapter, that shows who Satan is going to be making war with when he's cast out of heaven. See, Satan isn't going to make war with everybody. Satan is going to make war with one nation or one race of people on this earth. He don't need to make war with the nation because there's children already. Now I'm going to pick this up. I was in Revelations 12, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 7 again. It says, "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought with his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven." In other words, Satan getting thrown out of heaven. "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." What he deceived the world with was telling people they don't have to keep God's law. You're going to be judged by it. And like he told us, it shall be our righteousness if we do all the things contained in this law. The apostles did it, and the Messiah did it. But man, the Gentiles have told us, oh, you don't have to do nothing God say. All you got to do is believe in his son. This is verse 10, Revelations 12 and verse 10. "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation, and strength, and the kingdom of our Elohim, and the power of his anointed one. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before Elohim day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Therefore rejoice, you heaven, and you that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he have but a short time. He only got 3.5 years, the great tribulation period." And people talk about Christ can come any day. Christ can't come until after this here happens. Certain prophecies has to be fulfilled before the Messiah shows up. Verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman that brought forth the man-child. Remember? The man-child that was going to rule all nations. So who was it that produced the man-child? It was the nation of the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember? The Messiah was the son of David, and David came out of the tribe of Judah. This is why it called him the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. Verse 14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into a place where she is nourished for 3½ years from the face of the serpent. Now this takes place when Russia is preparing to destroy America. Jeremiah 50, Jeremiah 51, Isaiah 47, Isaiah 13, and Isaiah 18 backs that up. Verse 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he may cause her to be carried away with the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was angry with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Elohim and have the testimony of Yahshua HaMashiach. So we can very well see Satan isn't making war with the nations. Satan is making war with one nation of people, the children that brought forth the man-child. These that was going to rule all nations, these are the people that were sent out into the world to preach the gospel. Not all the nations, but when you go back and read Antiquities and see what happened, when General Titus invaded Jerusalem in 70 AD, we were told by Josephus that they killed off 1.5 million of our people, and the last 97,000 they rounded up and sold to the Ethiopians to work in the mines. We stayed down in Africa from the 1st century until the 1600, and then that's when the Africans began to round us up and sell us to the British, Spanish, Portuguese, and Dutch as slaves here in America. That's why the Negro sang the songs they called the Negro spirituals. They were all about the Hebrew children and all about the return of our people back to Zion. But the man tried to get slick on us. See, what he did was in the mid-40s, right after World War II, rather, what they did was they began to give us gospels in the church. And once they gave us gospels, then we weren't going back down to the River Jordan no more. What was going to happen now is that we were going off to heaven. But let me read something to you that the Messiah told the children of Israel, our fathers, when he was in the land. This is after he received his baptism and so forth. I'm going to pick this up at St. Matthew chapter 5. And I'm going to pick this up at verse 13. See what he told the children of Israel. St. Matthew 5 and verse 13. It says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and be trodden under the foot of men." Ain't that what happened to us? We were cast out of the land because we still practiced that paganism of the nations after the Messiah came. So we were cast out of the land to fulfill the curses that was put upon us in Deuteronomy and in Isaiah and in in other books in the Scripture, especially when you get back up into Genesis. Genesis it tells you that we were going to be servants for 400 years in this country. This is Matthew chapter 5 and verse 14. Now remember, he just told our people, you are the salt of the earth. Now in verse 14 it says, you are the lights of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and to give light to all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Don't think I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I didn't come to destroy, but to fulfill. For yes, I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law until all be fulfilled. Well, wait a minute. Christians say we're not under the law, we're under grace. Christ said one jot one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law until all be fulfilled. He didn't say what was written of him. He said till all be fulfilled. Let me go ahead and finish this up, and this is verify that. This is St. Matthew 5 and verse 19. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Well, let's examine that. Y'all, the Christians say they're not under the law, they're under grace. Well, if you don't teach God's law, when the kingdom of heaven's set up, you're going to be called the least because you ain't going to be there. You're going to be in that, you're going to be in that grave. That's where you're going to be at, waiting to be thrown in that lake of fire after Messiah's reign here on this earth. It says, but whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom. No one is teaching law in the church. They say we're not under the law, we're under grace. Well, let's see what the Messiah had to say in this next verse. Verse 20. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven. See, you shall in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven unless you do better than the scribes and Pharisees did. They call themselves keeping the law. And once again, we're the Culture Center of NCCI. We're located at 3901A Covington Highway in Decatur, Georgia. We have classes on Saturday at 1 p.m., Sunday morning at 10:30, 11 o'clock rather, a.m., and Tuesday night we have a Bible class at 8 p.m. Thursday night there's a sisters class at 8 p.m. and when you come you can always ask questions and you will get the answer that is read from the scripture and no man's interpretation of the scripture. That was our problem. We got caught up into what man interpreted for us, but we never quite did what Yahweh said. It was just like we were told concerning Yahweh's holy days. Now the Christians has given us Valentine's Day with Cupid, pagan god. We know all about that. Then they changed the beginning of the year and celebrate what they call New Year's Day. They changed the beginning of the year from April to January, and then they gave us their pagan two-faced god, Janus, that looks into the past, into the future. They gave us that god, and now every December 31st at 12:01, then what y'all do? Y'all drop your balls and go celebrate Janus's birthday as the new year begins for the nation. But it all tied up in the pagan worship. Plus they turn around and gave us Easter, and Easter never comes on the same date of the month. See? Then they turned around and gave us Christmas and told us, well, this is Christ's birthday. According to the Bible, there was no way Christ could have been born in December, especially December 25th. But what we find out is that's the day of the winter solstice. That's the day the sun is furthest away from the earth, and this is the time that people grab onto that pagan deity that they're dealing with. But let me read you something pertaining to that out of Jeremiah chapter 16, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 19. It says, O Yahweh, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come unto you from the ends of the world, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanities, and things wherein there is no profit. Shall a man make gods to himself, and there are no gods? Therefore, behold, I will for this once cause them to know. I will cause them to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is Yahweh. So Jeremiah told you that the nation, the one that's teaching this garbage they call religion, that they're going to come over and say that their fathers inherited lies, vanities and things wherein there is no profit. Simply, and they'll have to do that because the Messiah is going to come here to set up a righteous government, and whosoever do not follow the laws of God during that millennial kingdom will be devoured with the sword, because the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. See, I tell people all the time, Yahweh is a jealous God, and he has to be served in truth and in righteousness. But man don't want to deal with that. What man want to deal with is the way that he feel about serving his God. But let me read something else to you out of Isaiah chapter 5, and we're going to see what's going to happen, what Yahweh had to say pertaining to his people, his chosen people. I'm going to pick this up in Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 25. It says, Therefore is the anger of Yahweh kindled against his people, and he has stretched forth his hand against them, and has smitten them, and the hills did tremble, and their carcasses was torn in the midst of the streets. For all this, his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. And he shall lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss unto them from the ends of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed, swiftly. None shall be weary, nor stumble among them. None shall slumber or sleep, neither shall the girdle of their loins be loose, nor the latches of their shoes broken, whose arrows are sharp, and all their bows are bent. Their horses' hoof shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Their roaring shall be like that of a lion. They shall roar like young lions. Yea, they shall roar and lay their hands upon the prey, and carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea, and the one looking to the land, behold, darkness and sorrow, and the light in the heavens is darkened thereof. Well, he's talking about the day that the Lord is going to come. He said he's going to set up an ensign, and that ensign is going to gather his people from the four corners of the earth. See, we must understand that the earth, Yahweh created this earth to be inhabited, and he's going to set up a very righteous government here on this earth, giving people a second chance with peace upon the earth. With Yahweh's laws in effect, he's giving people a second chance to live in peace and prosperity with the children of Israel here on this land. And to show you that, I'm going to the prophet Zechariah, and I'm going to read something to y'all that that Yahweh told the prophet Zechariah. See, y'all don't get this stuff in church. Y'all preachers stay off on top of the house trying to lay shingles on the top of the house and not laying the foundation. This is in Zechariah chapter 8, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 1. It says, Again, the word of Yahweh of hosts came unto me, saying, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, I was jealous for Judah with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury. Thus said Yahweh, I am returned unto Judah, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, the mountain of Yahweh of hosts, the holy mountain. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, There shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, and every man with a staff in his hand for very age. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the midst thereof. They ain't talking about no heaven now. Okay? Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, should it also be marvelous in mine eyes, saith Yahweh of hosts? Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, Behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country. I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. Well, we can't get around that. But see, that's not what the nation has to say. Now I'm going to skip down to verse 12 and verse 11. It says, But now, this is Zechariah 8 and verse 11. But now I will not be unto the residue of this people as in the former days, said the Yahweh of hosts. For the seed shall be prosperous, and the vine shall give her fruit, and the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their dew, and I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these things. And it shall come to pass that as you were a curse among the heathen, O house of Judah and house of Israel, so will I save you, and you shall be a blessing. Fear not, but let your hand be strong. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, as I thought to punish you when your fathers provoked me to wrath, and said the Lord of hosts, and repented not, so again have I thought in these days to do well unto Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. Now I'm going to skip down to verse 20. It says, for thus saith Yahweh of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people, and the inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us go speedily to pray before Yahweh and to seek Yahweh of hosts. I will go also. Yes, many people and strong nations will come to seek Yahweh of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before Yahweh. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nation. In other words, you're going to save a tenth of all the nation. Even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we has heard that God is with you. That's not what the nations say. The nations say you got to be a Christian to be saved. But see, that's not according to the Word of God. Once again, we are the Culture Center of NCCI. We're located at 3901A Covington Highway in Decatur, Georgia. Come by and write your questions down. Bring your questions, bring your preacher and anybody else that you want to bring. And let's come by and let's sit down and reason out these holy words. And if you do that, I guarantee you one thing. If you're looking for the truth in the Word of God, once you come here, if you're looking for the truth, if you want salvation, you'll never go anyplace else. You'll realize that the nation, your slave masters, is the one that taught you Christianity. So many different denominations because they never could get that lie straight. And here we are, we don't do the research, so we foolish enough to believe the lies that the nations are teaching us simply because we are destroyed for lack of knowledge. But this is what Yahweh said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And he's saying, seeing that you resist knowledge, I'm going to resist you. And what we try to do is give people not only knowledge of the holy, but understanding of that knowledge, so you'll be wise enough, you'll attain the wisdom enough to walk in God's law and do what he says do. It's the reason why Yahweh brought us over here slaves. And that reason is because we didn't keep his law. Once again, the New Covenant Congregation of Israel, located at 3901A Covington Highway in Decatur, Georgia. Peace, prosperity, Yahweh be with y'all, and my blessings be upon you too. Shalom.